Hello, hello, hello. This is Adrienne Berg, and this is a very special show today because you may or may not know that it is not only Volunteer Week as we are recording this, but it really is morphing over to Volunteer Month. And we're going to look at something very special, and that is the collaboration among and between the generations, something that seems in so many arenas so difficult to do. We have somebody who really is taking leadership and is really pulling it off. Her name is Cairo Eubanks, and you're going to absolutely love what she has to say. So, Cairo, I'm so happy to have you with me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Adrian.
Now, we want to talk about something that you actually founded, which is Cairo Speaks, Cairo Writes. We're going to lead with that, but then we're going to take a deeper dive into what is meant by intergenerational collaboration and how it's really worked to make serious change in serious issues throughout the world. But first, tell us about your company, Cairo Speaks, Cairo Writes.
Thank you so much for that question, Adrian. Hello, everyone. Just to introduce myself, I am Cairo Eubanks. I'm a global youth advocate as a youth representative to Generations United. I'm also a pageant queen and I am a bridge builder. And that's what I've been able to use my roles, in the nonprofit or social impact space towards. In the for-profit or private sector, I am the CEO of Cairo Speaks, Cairo Writes, which is a Florida certified minority and women-owned business. And really what I do is a lot of what I do really lives at the intersection of strategic communications, program design, as well as systems building. And I've been really fortunate to work across the nonprofit, intergovernmental, and private sector spaces. So when organizations want to be able to actually build something like an initiative, a strategy, a framework, or a digital platform, that's where I really get energized. And I've worked with organizations all the way from local nonprofits and small businesses, all the way to intergovernmental agencies through Cairo Speaks, Cairo Writes.
Share the fact that under 30 years old, you've managed to be at 30 countries, which is very convenient, 30 in 30. Yeah, we were certainly going to talk about that. But I
Please.
have a question. We don't prepare. Everybody knows by now that we don't prepare our guests. We just ask the questions that come up because of what you are saying to me. So
Yes.
here's my question that I start with Cairo Speaks, Cairo Writes.
Mhm.
Because you're helping companies and organizations and even the government shape their messages, how many come to you and say, I want to make my message intergenerational? How many actually ask you for an intergenerational strategy or message? Or are they just coming to you with a particular demographic? It's one demographic and they don't care about all of this inclusion.
I think it's quite interesting that you asked that question because I've been thinking about this quite a lot. I believe that when organizations are coming to me and they want to put together initiatives or they need program development and they need someone or a team to come in and help them from concept to reality to execute, they are oftentimes thinking of the community or of the larger group at whole, so to speak.
Mm.
However, it's intrinsically intergenerational, but it's not intentionally intergenerational. And I believe that's where the gap is in terms of that first ask. Now, when it comes to the nonprofit and social impact space, or some of the civil, well, what we call civil society, I'm talking
Right.
to you, Adrian, right? So being in the civil society space, that is intergenerational is the buzzword. And I'm hearing it left, right, and center. I mean, when I was in New York last month for the 70th session on the Commission on the Status of Women, or CSW 70 in New York, intergenerational was spoken in every panel that I was a part of, right? Fast forward to EcoSoc Youth Forum, where I had the pleasure of being able to participate in the ministerial breakfast, as well as get to celebrate my birthday on the same day. My birthday was April 15th. So, that was also a space where I was constantly hearing how people were being intentionally intergenerational. Let's make sure that our solutions are intergenerational. Let's make sure that we're using an intergenerational approach.
Mhm.
And so I believe that that's the difference that I'm hearing.
So I'm just going to tell everybody, I'm going to unpack the title of one of the things that you're doing because a great event has taken place, and that is on the 27th of this month. People are hearing us the next day or the next week, but a great event took place, part of Global Intergenerational Week. And it's called Together We Can Create Spaces of Connection Across Generation to Advance the SDGs. Now, before we go any further, you're going to tell us what the SDGs are, because it has to do with goals set by the United Nations.
Yeah.
And from that, we can use a platform for another question I wanted to speak to you about that has to do with volunteering and volunteering. But to understand this, explain what SDGs are.
So the SDGs, thank you for that question, Adrian, are the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals that range from no poverty and no hunger all the way to goals that are designed to impact climate change or climate advocacy and climate action, all the way to gender equality. And really, to break it down for listeners who may be hearing about these Sustainable Development Goals for the first time, these goals were voted on by millions of people around the world, asking, what are some of the priorities that you have? What would you like to see in your communities as well as around the world, right? And so these were resounding answers that were then condensed into 17 goals that each have their own indicators or markers for how we can be able to achieve these goals. And the goal is to be able to achieve all 17 by 2030. Now, there have been a lot of challenges. Well, I should preface this by saying that there's been quite a bit of success working towards these goals, either as individuals or as organizations, as communities, right, or as governments, right? So the idea is that we're all working together to be able to achieve this goal. So there have been some milestones. However, there have been challenges, like, for example, when COVID hit, that really impacted several of the sustainable development goals, like quality education, for example, right? There's so much that could be said about how, the pandemic impacted us individually as well as collectively as a whole. And so with that being said, we're about 17% of the way to achieving all of the goals. However, being in 2026, I see this as an opportunity to really activate and think critically as well as creatively. How can we achieve these sustainable development goals? What are individual actions? What are things or best practices that we can be able um, to to provide to organizations or communities, or even to ask governments to be able to implement, so that way we can get even closer to these goals? And I do have something that I would love to share in terms of what I've been doing and on my end in terms of doing my part. So, Together for SDGs was created so that we could be able together and, collectively and intergenerationally be able to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. I know we're going to be diving into that
Yes, we
more
sure
in a
will.
bit, but I did want to share that is the direct connection for SDGs. That is the work that we're doing because we believe in the Sustainable Development Goals and we believe that we can collectively achieve them, but we cannot achieve them in silos. But it takes all of us as a whole coming together with the focus and intention of being able to see sustainable development.
So, with regard to the SDGs, and the reason I asked you for a definition, and you did such a beautiful job,
Thank
is
you.
that there are two kinds of people who are listening. One are people who are already in non-governmental organizations, NGOs, they're already in the nonprofit world. It
Yes.
would behoove them to take a look at what those 17 SDGs are and
Mhm.
see where they fit in and where their organization fits in. So that's number one. And if they
Absolutely.
happen to be not affiliated with the United Nations, to seek that affiliation. And if their goal has to do with those 17 SDGs, they'll surely qualify. Second group of people are individuals looking
Mhm.
where should they, perhaps they retired, where should they put their time? And I was going to use the word invest. Where should they invest their time?
That's a great way of putting
Time is
it.
money. I learned today that in California, An hour of volunteer work is considered to cost $40.19. That's what, so per hour, 1 hour. So it's very, you're giving something. You're giving something that has all kinds of value. Where do you want to put? So I will include in our show notes a place where they can get the recordings or the materials. This is going to give direction to people who are looking to make a difference in the world or are already in that, but don't quite feel that they understand who to collaborate with. It's going to make,
Yeah,
I think, a very big difference in their thinking. So we thank you for that. Now,
thank you.
in addition to all of this, you were Miss Black Florida.
Yes.
You had this notion to bring the world to Florida. And what that really meant to me was the old phrase that came out in my day, which was think globally, act locally.
Yes.
Empower the people around you, in your case, the great state of Florida, to make a difference that has such a butterfly effect that not only is it felt locally, but it's felt all over the world. So
Mhm.
before I take a break, I really would love to hear what you got into, because I can imagine that you brought a lot to Florida and they're still reeling from it. So tell us,
Yeah.
tell us what you mished up over there. Let's hear what's going on.
Yes. Oh my goodness, I would love to. So, for some context, I joined pageantry like way later. Like I know most people they may start,
Children, little
at a
girl.
younger. Yes, yes. I started actually, funnily enough, at the age right before I was supposed to age out or like be
Ah,
cut. So I was asked, if I was, so this is a bit of backstory just so that you understand, the reason and the connection between the, think globally, act locally. I was asked, if I wanted to be a coach and actually score a local pageant. And my mom asked me if I was interested, and I was like, I would be interested in that. And the lady, she said, actually, wait, how old is she? And she said, wait, she should try to compete. And I said, I could never see myself doing pageants. Like I never saw that for myself, right? And I'd already been doing, several years of civil society youth advocacy work as a youth representative. I had already been a youth representative for an NGO, New Future Foundation, led by Queen Mother Dr. Blakely for some years. And I was the co-chair of the Civil Society Youth Representative Steering Committee right around that. Well, actually, I was a member right around that time that, I was asked. So I was already very engaged in advocacy work. And when I was told that, you're going to age out next year, like you might as well try it before you age out. I said, okay, let me do it. And what I realized when I competed in my first pageant and I was honored to have won the title of Miss Broward County for Miss America, it was an amazing experience, but really it showed me the importance of community servant leadership. Like I see myself as a servant leader, and I thought, how amazing would it be for me to add this international element to this organization, right? And the more that I shared the work that I was doing, some of my background, having taught at a residential school in South India, through a fellowship program and just different opportunities that I've had to give back and make an impact. I was like, I want to find a way to connect that and be a bridge builder. So there are people, for example, who have experienced the beautiful state of Florida, and they know that Florida is the gateway to the rest of the world in so many ways when we think about the Caribbean, Latin America, right? And how so many people come to Florida. Well, I wanted to find a way to bring that culture that I had been able to experience through my youth advocacy work, through traveling, to the competition and to my community. And so being a part of that, the Miss America pageant and even Miss Black Florida USA, as Miss Black Florida USA, I should say, it allowed me to really work in the community and connect what I was already doing globally, locally. So
locally.
there are initiatives that I did, including Operation Stop Cyber Harassment, which is related to online gender-based violence, all the way to co-organize and also moderate the first ever youth engagement panel at the Florida International Trade and Cultural
Ah,
Expo or
Interesting.
FTSE, which brings over 60 countries together, and represented by prime ministers, former prime ministers and presidents, ambassadors, representatives from ministries coming together to bring the world to Broward County, for a period of time. And so I was able to do that through the panel, but also that was really my goal. My goal was to bring the world to Florida and to connect Florida to the larger world, especially as it
Mhm.
relates to youth.
Well, certainly when we talk about travel and we talk about voluntourism and
Yes.
basically back home and volunteering, we're talking about just that dynamic. Now, before we take a break, there are many people out there that want to do something in this world and they're lost. They don't know their place. So, one of
Mhm.
the suggestions I always make is to take a look at these strategic development goals. There are only 17, but as Cairo said, they were voted on by millions of people. And within each of them, there are hundreds and hundreds of iterations. For example, one of them is human rights equality. And in my life, I work for the human rights of older adults. So within there, there's the human rights of people with disabilities, of children, of women, go on and on. Uh, you'll find yourself in those SDGs. But then you say to yourself, so what kind of a leader am I going to be? What am I going to be a leader at all? What am I bringing to the table? And there
Mhm.
is a thought group, and apparently Cairo has shown us she's in that group that actually thinks about who they are. And you think about that, and you've come to the conclusion that you're a servant leader. Now, there are
Yes.
many kinds. So we come back, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what that means,
Mhm.
what it propelled you to do, but what you're not, so that other people may have other functions, other kinds of leadership. So don't you guys go anywhere. We'll be right back. Our free weekly newsletter, Travel Tuesday. Just visit agelesstraveler.com, click subscribe, and enter your name and email for a surprise gift. What's the surprise? Well, if I tell you, it's not a surprise. What I can say is that Travel Tuesday tackles travel barriers like money, health, companionship, and even travel burnout, and gives you a taste of what our blog and podcast have to offer every single week, helping you explore the world effortlessly. And now we're back with a compelling human being. Her name is Cairo Eubanks. You already heard that she is somebody that brings generations together. She's an international and intergenerational leader. She works at the United Nations and she works in her own company, Cairo Speaks, Cairo Writes, so that organizations can come to her for their messaging, for their outreach, for their collaboration, and their strategic plans. But in the course of talking to us, she used a phrase. She said, I consider myself a servant leader. And I immediately pounced on that because I often talk about what it means to create a mission, a personal mission, and how it's done. Once you do that, and I'm hoping some of these SDGs will trigger in your mind what you really want to devote yourself to, you have to know
Mhm.
your place in all that. And once you do, you really can make change in the world. But you call yourself a servant leader. Give us the definition of that in your mind and what it has led you to do. And what are our other choices?
Okay, absolutely. So I identify as a servant leader, and that is because I believe in serving the community. I believe that that is my purpose, that is why I was brought onto this earth. I see myself, and I've always said this literally since I was, a teenager, and, I would say in my early 20s, I remember saying that I saw myself as a vessel, and my goal is to be able to pour into my cup as much as I can so I can pour into others. I realized, from a young age, I think it's just the connection that I've had with people, being a dual citizen may have helped, being Jamaican and American. Also, the idea that there are so many commonalities that we all share. I see the human in all of us, right? And the experiences that I've had, I've been blessed to have traveled to many places and lived in quite a few places as well. The interactions that I've had with people, I see that at our core, we really just want to show compassion. And oftentimes, what's hindering us are challenges that may be structural or systematic, or maybe, there are things that if those barriers were eliminated, we would have a happier and more productive community and society and that we live in. And so my goal is always to contribute towards that, right? So whether it is a smile, whether it is, working with an organization, whether it is mentoring someone, whether it is volunteering or just sharing my message, right? My goal is to really make an impact on the people that I'm connecting with. And I just want to serve. There's no real agenda to it other than I believe that if there's something that I can contribute in terms of value, I will.
It's so interesting because there's so many different types of leaders and leadership styles. And one of them is simply to be the leader. It's as simple
Yeah.
as that's a type of role. And people really advance when they think of who they are in the world of giving. So it may surprise people, but I want to give you an example of my feeling about this. I took a lot of time to think about what kind of a leader I am, right?
Mm,
And I came to the conclusion that I'm not. I'm not a leader. The thing I hate the most is to be the chairman of a committee. But
mm,
make me a chairman, and it's the worst thing. I'm a facilitator. Took a long time for me to figure that word out. I can help you get where you want to go. I can facilitate things, whether it's helping you promote something or it's connecting you to the right person, right? Or if it's licking the envelopes in the back of the room because you got to get that out fast.
mm,
That's me. And I love it. And everybody listening will know who you are the minute you say to yourself, and I love it. That is you. The thing that you say you love is who you really are. And don't be embarrassed about who it is you come up with because that's who you are and that's going to change the world
mm,
as much as any other kind of leadership. And the same for people who are listening that are in an NGO already and they're feeling burnt out or they're feeling depressed or they're not getting anywhere or they're looking around saying, where else should I really be? What do you love? It could be that you're in the right place in the wrong role. That
mm,
happens a lot as well. Okay. So I wanted to bring that out as something that you have mastered very quickly. It came to you very quickly, but other people sometimes have to think about it and ponder it. Now, let's get to the travel side of this, something that everybody knows I love so much. 30
Me
countries.
too.
All right, under 30. Now, how did that happen? Were you in a military family or did you just get fellowships all over the world? How did this go on?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm excited to answer this question. So it first started, I say, from before I was born. So when my parents named me Cairo, they named me Cairo like Egypt, but it was also prophetic. They wanted to name all of my siblings, after capitals, and within African countries to connect us to the continent, but also to empower us. So Cairo like Egypt, the victorious one, Dakar, like Senegal, or means happiness. And then Sudan, she is a country, my little sister, she's a country within herself because she's just a personality. She's a wonder, and she's actually a TEDx speaker, I should
Uh-huh.
mention, at 19, and dwelling place of the Black peoples. That's what her name means. So, from when I was young and like, 3, 4, 5, and really learning what my name meant and learning about the place that had been named after. I wanted to go there. And I'd made a goal within myself as a young, it's like a young girl, like maybe 8, 9 years old, that I wanted to visit not only the places that my sibling Dakar had been named after at that time, but I wanted to visit all African countries. And then it expanded to the world, right? So there was a curiosity that was born within me even before I even knew myself, right? Fast forward, I learned about this opportunity called Semester at Sea. You could be on a cruise ship, you could travel to all around the world, and you could be in your classroom, take your classes for college on a ship. I was sold. My junior year, I'm blessed to say that I was able to do semester at sea. I got to travel to 11 countries around the world, Europe, Africa. I got to go to the African continent for the first time, going to Morocco and Senegal. So I got to go to Dakar before I got to go to Egypt, which is interesting. And so that then the travel bug had bitten me and it was just no going back. Since then, I had a fellowship where I was teaching and travel in South India, and then I traveled throughout India. And then from there, I went to Egypt, I was in Ethiopia, so I was able to experience that. And then really, it's been some of the opportunities that I've had as a youth representative, as a youth advocate, where there have been conferences or programs in other countries, such as Kenya for the UN Civil Society
That was
conference that
Nairobi.
happened.
That was in
Yes,
Nairobi. Yeah.
in Nairobi, as well as Rwanda for the Women Deliver conference in 2023. So those are just examples.
Now, do you think I'm going to explain something we have so much in common with,
Yeah.
but how has travel informed you? I once asked somebody or said to somebody, I've been so many places, it's now 140 countries. And
Wow.
what impresses me is how similar people are. And
Yes.
she was a psychologist. And she says, no, I've been around and I'm impressed by how different people are. I still haven't seen it. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
You know what? My dad growing up would always say, traveling is hazardous to your prejudice. And I completely agree because I believe that the more you travel, the more you see, okay, we may speak different languages, we may have different intonations, we may eat different foods, right? But at the end of the day, the common denominators are we want a safe place to live in, right? We want to be able to grow and age in a community that is made and built for us. We want to be able to love our families and love the people around us, right? And I think there's a genuine desire, um, intrinsically to connect with one another, right? And so the more we travel, the more we see that we are so connected. We may not necessarily speak the same language, but we may find common ground in the music that we listen to or experiences that we've had, that have nothing to do with where we were born.
I think that's so true, and it makes it so much easier to actually get things done
Okay.
because you develop a real love of people and they know it. And when they
Mhm.
know it, even though they're very different from you, they do things with you and for you. And listen, just an amazing dynamic. If you like someone, they tend to listen to you and like you and work with you. For me, I absolutely agree with that. And my work on the ship, because I'm a speaker on cruise ships, one of the things I talk about is that travel geroscience makes you younger or keeps you healthier while you're growing old. But one of the things, as you said, the NIA and NIH have done studies on this. Travel makes you more empathetic. And what
Yeah.
they mean about that is what you said. It just makes people so similar when you see them that you understand. You even
Yeah.
understand their prejudices. You even understand why they think some a way that you disagree with.
Yes.
But you may still disagree with them, but you
Hmm.
understand you understand why they feel that way. And that
Yes.
empathy that can change the world. Yeah.
Traveling humanizes us. So we realize that we are all human. We all have emotions. We all experience happiness, sadness. We all have goals and desires, and we just want to connect to each other.
I think that's a great point, and that's a beautiful way of putting it. We're going to take a little break. We'll come back, and I want to talk about India. I know
Okay.
that you've done some very good work there, and we're going to talk about Together for SDGs. So don't you guys go anywhere. We'll be right back. If you've been thinking about a cruise, I've definitely got you covered with Cruises It. Now, we have just become affiliated with them. And who are they? Well, Cruises It is the top agency for all the main cruise lines and some of the less known cruise lines as well. Cruises It has access to booking space that's been open years in advance, so you can get the best cabins. That's just number one. But they also make the prices lower. The cruise lines give Cruises It their own exclusive agency discounts. And if you're not from the cruise line, they have their own agency discounts that would apply as well. So you get both any discounts you would normally get on the cruise line, plus additional discounts that are given exclusively to Cruises It because they bring in so much business. On top of all those discount perks, when you book with them, you get the best rate guaranteed. And this is because Cruise Fare Watch system takes place. Now, what Cruises It does is it tracks the pricing until the final payment date. So you keep in mind that to get the best rate guaranteed, you have to use my site. We have affiliated with them specifically. I sat down, I met with them in Tucson, Arizona. I met with Marianne Weather. We've now become good friends. She gave me a direct line, not only a link, which you can certainly use right away, but if you have questions, even a specific phone number. Cruises It offers this not just to anyone that is one of our followers, but if you have friends and family, you can bring them in too. So just take a look at the show notes and you will see our dedicated phone line and our dedicated link. Happy sailing. And we are back and we're celebrating Volunteer Week and we're celebrating what's really turning into Volunteer Month. And we're celebrating with Cairo Eubanks, and she is the founder of Cairo Speaks, Cairo Writes. In her nonprofit life, she also sits on so many committees, has made so much progress. She was Miss Black Florida. She brought the world to Florida, Florida to the world. She just finished a wonderful conference, and you'll see in the show notes and in our Travel Tuesday newsletter how you can actually get the notes or the recording of it. So just briefly, though, you are a traveler. We talked about the 30 countries and how you've fallen in love with travel. I did want to mention what we have in common is that I, too, ended up going to a lot of countries when I was very young.
Mm,
And that was even younger than college age. And just like you, I got hooked. And the
mhm,
reason was similar to you. They were all different countries. So I got to see people with different languages, different color, different
mhm,
food, different culture. And I still couldn't tell one from the other because everybody was playing the same, singing the same, worried about the same thing. And we were so young that we didn't know we didn't love each other. So
mm,
we were
mm,
11 years old. So we all really did love each other. And that included Israel, Yemen, France, Holland, and the
mm,
US. So imagine going when you're very young to these very different places and just
mhm.
having a good time
Yeah.
with no problems. And I've never looked back. All the places I've been, wherever they've been, whether it's Africa or the Middle East or Brooklyn, New York, all I see are the same people.
Right,
It's
right.
just, but that's really the way I feel about it. So,
Mhm,
but you did work in an interesting area, which is southern India, and I've enjoyed India and I've enjoyed going there, but I haven't worked there. I've been there as a tourist. So tell
mhm.
us what you were doing when you were there.
Okay, absolutely. I was a fellow for a program. I was actually Amprakash, and I was an ambassador as well for that program. And I had the opportunity to volunteer at a residential school in Tamil Nadu, South India. And it was an incredible experience. I cannot there are no words to express not only the value that I got just being in India, reminded me of Jamaica in so many ways where you could be able to pick up like, coconut water, on the side of the road or, get your fresh mangoes. Everything is so fresh and clean and, and delicious to eat. But also, working directly with youth, I was working with students and creating curriculums for students between the ages of second grade, computer science, all the way to ninth graders, English literature. And with my English literature students, it was something so special. It was actually really the impetus of creating Bringing the World to Florida, that whole social impact initiative, because I realized that, when I was teaching the students and we were, having different short stories or books as we were preparing for the national exams that the students were getting prepared to take, there were different themes, and I would find ways to connect their stories and our stories to what we were learning, these different thematic issues. And that built bridges between us. It connected us, and we were able to talk about all sort of things. And, everything from naming ceremonies and what does it mean for our names, all the way to, different issues related to gender equality. I still keep in touch with my students today, who call me Miss Cairo, which I think is so, it's just like being called, called Miss Cairo when you're
Right.
like 21 or 22 years old. But it really changed my life and changed me for the better because I believe I had that experience.
Well, right now you're very passionate about what you're doing next, which of course is this Together for SDGs. Cairo gave us a dissertation about what the SDGs mean, Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them, and they were set a while ago by the United Nations with a very optimistic idea that these goals would be reached by 2030. When you say Together for the SDGs, together we can create spaces of connection, right, across generations to advance the SDGs. That's a pretty serious mission. So tell us about that.
Yes. Together for SDGs is a global initiative that is housed at Generations United that is bringing together younger and older leaders and change makers to accelerate the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. This initiative was built upon the momentum of the Intergenerational and Youth Subcommittee of the 2024 UN Civil Society Conference in Nairobi, Kenya. And I was really honored to have been a co-chair alongside with my Together for SDGs co-lead, Dr. Kristen Bodiford, who's a senior fellow at Generations United. And together with her, Peter Amondi of the Global Youth Forum, and several other youth, and I would say youth and members from the Intergenerational and Youth Subcommittee, we came together and we said, okay, we built up so much momentum. Together, we were working so hard. We were able to see, for example, through our 2 briefings that we did, we were able to impact over 2,000 youth from 100 countries, right? Being able to share the messages and the initiatives and also the objectives of the UN Civil Society Conference. But then we were like, okay, we got to see, some of these goals met, including the hashtag 2024 UNCSC trending #1 in Kenya on X, right? At that time,
Wow.
it was a big deal. What's next, right? We have hundreds of youth who are excited, eager to engage. How do we move on from this momentum and build upon it instead of just letting it stop at the conference in Nairobi? How do we bring this to New York for the Pact for the Future and beyond? So the work that we did was incredible because it laid the foundation for Together for SDGs. And Together for SDGs is a youth-led intergenerational impact hub. And what we've done is we're using the Building Communities in Action methodology that Dr. Bodiford, our co-lead, has co-designed, which is intergenerational in nature. And we're working with youth design leads from around the world in countries like Kenya, in Nigeria, in Pakistan, in India. And after learning this methodology, now they've put it to work and they're implementing it within their communities. And so going through that whole cycle, because there are 4 phases to the Building Communities in Action framework, we finished year 1 and now we're starting year 2, where it's just amazing to hear what some of the youth are doing, as well as the next steps for sustainability, which include funding and resource mobilization, just to continue the impact.
Well, we congratulate you. And sometimes I ask a guest what's working, but I don't have to ask you because we now know what is working. And
Thank
I have to say, keep up the good work. I certainly hope, because we're recording this
you.
right before your conference, your meeting. that's taking place on the 27th, that everybody will be have a cliffhanger. What did they
Yes.
talk about? What did they do? I want to hear what came out of this. And if so,
Yes.
they can get that information, even though they're listening to this a day or two or a week or two after the conference. So I thank you so much for being with us. This has just been delightful. It's just what I expected, but you really do blow people away. I hope you know that
Thank
now.
you so much, Adrian. It's truly been a pleasure speaking with you. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and I really appreciate what you share. And I just want to say this, Adrian. It's important for us to know who we are so that way we can make the most focused and intentional impact, right? So whether you identify as a servant leader, you identify as a facilitator, you identify as a connector, a bridge builder, whatever you identify as, just make sure that you are intentionally going to make a difference, even if it's a small difference in your own home, your community, and hopefully the world.
Absolutely. And no, and everybody, please do look at those show notes. And for those of you who know that I have on the travel show, I usually say, never stop traveling. Here I'll say, never stop changing the world.